The Chicago Symphony Orchestra performed the music of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart last Saturday at Orchestra Hall, and it was accompanied by the 1984 film Amadeus. I was rather annoyed and distracted by the film and tried to tune it out for most of the evening, but I kept coming back to the fascination really with the story of the stories in the film, and also the story of the period of time when the film was made in the 1980s. The film captured the exuberance and excess and extravagance with the costumes and the interior and the music. And it reminded me of a friendlier, happier time when people actually were having fun. And if they weren't living so well, at least we all looked like we were living pretty good. During intermission, the young lady in my row I was chatting with said that she especially was enjoying this vintage film because it was made before she was born. I really ruminated on the idea of what an amazing assembly of people it was at Orchestra Hall, nearly 2,400 people. It was a glorious congregation. While I was reflecting on that, someone came up to me who recognized me from my former church life and asked me, "Is that woman still there?" Welcome to Sunday Coffee Hour. I'm Stanley Smith. At Sunday Coffee Hour, we talk about everything and nothing. And this week, we talked about how if you haven't worn an article of clothing in 2 years, you probably need to get rid of it. We also talked about the new film called Tar, and we also talked about the old Betty Davis film, Now Voyager. This Sunday, it was rather hard to track down actually what the lectionary readings were because at Washington National, they're on a sermon series about peace and restoring mercy and justice. And at St. James, they were on had a sermon theme based on their Founders Day. So when I finally did track it down, it was from Genesis, the idea that sometimes God needs to wrestle with us, and from Timothy, the idea that we all just want to believe what we want to believe. At National at St. James, they had related passages, basically the idea that we want to turn away from sound doctrine when it doesn't suit our needs, and we don't want to hold on to false narratives that seem to suit us so much better. At Washington National Cathedral, Dean Hollerith continued on their sermon series framed within the context of the upcoming political season, and that it does grate on me somewhat, but I have to say, Randy pulled it out of the fire in a similar manner as Marianne Buddy did last week. And Randy shared some interesting ideas about humility and the notion of humility, being aware that we're incredible people, but we're made out of the very nature of the earth. So we're everything and nothing. And when we have a sense of that, we are naturally inclined to be humble. We can't fake humility. We can't fake it till we make it. Randy shared a charming story about his name is Dorothy Day, a social worker, talking to a homeless visitor in her mission project, and she was interrupted by somebody who wanted to speak to her. And when she encountered the disruption, she turned around and said, "Well, are you here to speak to one of us?" And the person inquiring was so struck by that, the idea that whenever we assume that someone's here to talk to us, we're naturally discounting someone else, especially when we're in a group. It's something to be mindful of. Randy also shared a recent Pew Research poll study, which showed that people are increasingly reluctant to discuss politics with other people, and especially when they've encountered somebody whose view is different than theirs. And they said the Pew Research study polled and researched Democrat-leaning people and Republican-leaning people and found that in the Democrat group, 65% of Democrats are reluctant to engage with anyone that they view as different, as opposed to 45% of Republicans who are opposed. So Republicans seem to be more open to engaging with people who they disagree with than Democrats. And Randy acknowledged the fact that most of the people, himself included in the congregation, are in the liberal leaning camp, the Democrat camp, and they probably need to own the idea that they're probably, ironically, not as open as they need to be or think they are. At St. James Cathedral, they were celebrating their Founders' Day. They are 188 years old, they believe, even though they're not quite sure. They're not quite sure they want to believe that, as opposed to what might be historically accurate. But that's what they're going with this year, that they're 188 years old. And Lisa explained that everybody is an individual and together, just like the very stones of the building. They've all come together. And she described the building, their ancient edifice, as being saturated, saturated with the prayers and faith of all the people who have come before them. And I thought that was such a startling image. The church I formerly attended, I don't think anybody would have ever described the building as saturated with anything. St. James is made out of rough, irregular stones, the native limestone of this region, as opposed to the smooth and elegant surfaces of the Indiana limestone that we're probably more familiar with. And as I left the cathedral, I glanced back at the irregular surface of the rough-hewn stones of the building, and I thought, that's quite a claim to make, the saturated building, the stones, and being proud of the fact that it's somewhat irregular and a little rough around the edges. Each week at Sunday Coffee Hour, we have our rough spots, and we have some differences, and we have people with different opinions, and it's all okay. I think we all realize in our own humility that we're everything and nothing all at the same time. If you would like to join us at Sunday Coffee Hour is every Sunday at 12 noon on Zoom. I will include my email in the description of this video. I'll be happy to send you an invitation, and I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.